The crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled with bioluminescent patterns as representatives from 47 species gathered for the quarterly session. Ambassador Ra of the Empire adjusted her ceremonial armor, its purple plates catching the ambient light as she reviewed the day's agenda. Her four eyes focused on the most contentious item, the proposed admission of a species calling itself humanity into the Galactic Alliance. Elder, the ancient keeper of records, floated above the central podium in his environmental suit. His species had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations across the galaxy's spiral arms. When he spoke, his translator rendered his deep harmonic tones into the common tongue. Esteemed representatives, before we vote on humanity's application, I must share what our deep space reconnaissance has revealed about this species. The holographic display activated, showing a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star in the galaxy's outer rim. They call their world Earth. It is a death world by our standards. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Death worlds were rare, and species that evolved on them were typically regarded with caution. The environments that forged such beings often created unpredictable behavioral patterns. Their planet experiences regular mass extinction events, continued. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, ice ages lasting, yet this species not only survived but thrived. They have turned their hostile environment into an advantage. Ambassador Ra's mandibles clicked in amusement. Elder, surely you exaggerate. We've observed their technology. They've barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Their ships are crude metal constructions held together by primitive chemical bonds. What possible threat could such a backward species pose? The delegation erupted in harmonious laughter, their synchronized clicks echoing throughout the chamber. As the galaxy's dominant military power, they had conquered 17 star systems in the past century. Their biomechanical technology seamlessly merged organic components with quantum processors, creating ships that could regenerate from damage and adapt to new threats in real time. Perhaps, added Subcommander Lees, Ra's tactical advisor, we should be more concerned about their primitive chemical weapons and kinetic projectiles. How terrifying! The sarcasm in his voice translated perfectly, drawing more laughter from the section. Elder waited for the amusement to subside. I urge caution. I've studied their history extensively. This species has survived challenges that would have exterminated most civilized races. They possess qualities that... Qualities? Ra interrupted, her voice rising. What qualities could possibly concern us? They fight with metal tubes that throw chunks of lead. They power their vessels by setting fire to dead organic matter. They haven't even achieved consciousness uploading or genetic optimization. These primitives are centuries behind our least advanced member species. The representative, whose people were known for their analytical nature, raised a tentacle. If I may, Ambassador Ra, the preliminary reports do mention some unusual characteristics. Their capacity for innovation under pressure seems significant. Innovation? Lees scoffed. They took 300 of their local years to progress from their first flight to reaching their moon. The hegemony achieved interstellar travel in less time than that. These humans are clearly evolutionary dead ends. Ambassador of the Confederated Worlds leaned forward in her environmental bubble. Her species had been observing humanity for several decades, fascinated by their peculiar social structures. Respectfully, the assessment may be premature. Human societies display remarkable adaptability. They've survived conflicts that consumed billions of their population, yet emerged stronger each time. Precisely my point, Ra retorted. They're barely civilized. They wage wars against their own species. How could such savages contribute to our peaceful alliance? If anything, their admission would destabilize the careful balance we've maintained for. Elder activated another holographic sequence, displaying human cities, their technology, their art. Look beyond their current limitations. Observe their rate of advancement. In the past century alone, they've progressed from animal-powered transportation to splitting atoms. They've gone from crude chemical rockets to fusion drives. This acceleration is unprecedented in our records. The delegation exchanged amused glances. Their own civilization had required 3 to achieve similar technological milestones, but they'd had the advantage of guidance from elder species. Humans had accomplished everything in isolation, without outside intervention. Elder Ra said, her tone patronizing, your concern for these primitives is admirable but misplaced. Yes, they've made rapid progress recently, but they're still operating with fundamental misconceptions about physics. They think matter and energy are separate phenomena. They believe space and time are fixed constants. Their entire scientific framework is built on sand. Subcommander Lees activated his personal hologram, displaying military capabilities. Our single dreadnought could sterilize their entire planet in less than one rotation. Their most powerful weapons barely qualify as mining tools by our standards. We've their nuclear arsenals charming little fusion devices that might damage a patrol corvette's outer hull. The laughter was more subdued now, but still present. Even species traditionally sympathetic to newcomers found it difficult to imagine how humans could meaningfully contribute to galactic civilization. Their technology was primitive, their social structures chaotic, their military capabilities laughable. "I've reviewed the military assessments," announced General N of the Void Runners, a species known for their mercenary services. "Human tactics are quaint. They still rely on linear formations and concentrated firepower. They haven't discovered phase shifting or temporal displacement. They can't even manipulate gravity on a tactical level. Fighting them would be like an adult sparring with children." Ambassador tried once more. "Their tactical limitations may be offset by other factors. Human psychology shows unusual resilience. They've demonstrated ability to function under extreme stress, to innovate solutions when conventional approaches fail. Their literature and entertainment media suggest they actually thrive on adversity." "Exactly," Ra exclaimed, seeing this as supporting her position. "They're addicted to conflict because they're too primitive to evolve beyond it. They romanticize violence and struggle instead of embracing the harmony that marks true civilization. They're a relic from a more barbarous age." The debate continued for several hours, with Elder repeatedly attempting to emphasize humanity's potential dangers. He spoke of their adaptability, their resilience, their tendency to turn disadvantages into unexpected advantages. He mentioned their remarkable ability to function as individuals while maintaining complex social cooperation. He highlighted their creativity under pressure and their disturbing comfort with calculated risks. Each point was systematically dismissed by the delegation and their allies. How could a species that still used wheels for transportation pose any threat to civilizations that had mastered dimensional folding? How could beings who communicated through crude sound vibrations challenge species with direct neural interfacing? How could creatures bound to linear time perception compete with races that could manipulate temporal flow? As the session concluded, Elder made one final attempt. "I propose we establish a monitoring protocol, observe humanity for one full cycle before making final determinations about their alliance status. Their development curve suggests they may surprise us." "Surprise us how?" Ra asked. "By discovering fire, by inventing the wheel. Elder, your caution is noted, but these humans are clearly harmless. They're too primitive to threaten anyone, too unsophisticated to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization. If anything, contact with us will accelerate their development to more acceptable levels." The vote proceeded as expected. Humanity's application for alliance membership was tabled pending further technological development. The recommendation was that humans should advance at least 3 more classification levels before reconsideration. Conservative estimates suggested this would require 2 to 3 centuries of unassisted development. As the representatives dispersed, returning to their respective vessels, and the delegation lingered in the chamber, Ambassador Ra and Subcommander Lees reviewed the human intelligence files one more time, sharing observations about primitive military structures and laughably simple technology. "Perhaps we should conduct a demonstration," Lees suggested casually. "Show these humans what real military power looks like. It might accelerate their development." Ra considered this. The Empire had built its reputation on swift, decisive campaigns against lesser species. Not conquests, of course, that would violate galactic law, but powerful demonstrations of superiority that encouraged voluntary submission and cooperation. "An interesting proposal," she mused. "A simple show of force. Move a patrol fleet through their space, demonstrate our capabilities, perhaps conduct some training exercises near their outer planets. Nothing hostile, merely educational." Both officers found this plan amusing. It would serve multiple purposes: demonstrating power to other alliance members, providing valuable training opportunities for their crews and potentially helping humanity understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. Neither considered that Elder might have been serious about his warnings. As the vessels departed for their home territory, their crews already planning the educational demonstration, Elder remained in the council chamber, reviewing the intelligence files once more. Something about the human data troubled him deeply, though he couldn't articulate exactly what. The humans' rate of technological development was unprecedented, but that wasn't what concerned him most. Their psychological profiles showed disturbing patterns of creativity under pressure, of treating impossible odds as challenges rather than defeats. Their historical records were filled with instances of smaller forces defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics and sheer determination. Most troubling of all was their approach to warfare. While other species viewed military conflict as a necessary evil to be concluded quickly and efficiently, humans seemed to regard it as a complex puzzle to be solved through innovation and persistence. They had developed hundreds of different tactical doctrines, thousands of specialized weapon systems, countless variations on basic strategic principles. They were, in short, a species that had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to fight and win against superior odds. And now the Empire, in their amusement and contempt, was about to give them their first opportunity to apply those lessons on a galactic scale. Elder sealed the intelligence files and departed the chamber. He had done everything possible to warn the Council. What happened next would serve as either validation of his caution or proof of his paranoia. Given humanity's history, he strongly suspected it would be the former. 3 months after the Council session, the first patrol fleet entered human space with the casual confidence of apex predators visiting a nature preserve. Commander Ra led 12 vessels of varying sizes, from nimble reconnaissance corvettes to the imposing battlecruiser Eternal Dominance. Their mission was simple: conduct training exercises near human colonies, demonstrate superior technology, and establish first official contact under terms that would leave no doubt about the galactic hierarchy. Admiral Sarah stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the sensor readings with growing fascination rather than fear. As head of humanity's newly formed Deep Space Defense Initiative, she had spent years preparing for this moment. The alien vessels were indeed impressive. Their energy signatures suggested technology centuries beyond current human capabilities. Analysis, she asked her tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Park ran through the preliminary data. 12 ships, composition unknown. Energy output suggests advanced fusion or antimatter propulsion. Weapons systems appear to be directed energy-based, probably plasma or particle beams. No obvious projectile capabilities. Interesting, mused. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but the pattern suggests they expect us to respond on a single channel. Very formal, very controlled. The fleet had arranged itself in a perfect geometric formation, exactly one light tower outside the orbit of Mars. It was an impressive display, maintaining such precise positioning while traveling at relativistic speeds required tremendous technological sophistication. Commander Ra was pleased with the effect. "Begin the demonstration sequence," he ordered. "I want clean energy discharges, perfect coordination, maximum visual impact. These humans should understand immediately that resistance would be futile." The alien vessels began what could only be described as an elaborate dance. They moved in complex patterns, their weapons systems cycling through different configurations, their hulls shifting colors in synchronized waves. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. Admiral watched with the intensity of a professional studying a new form of warfare. "Notice anything interesting about their formation, Park?" "Very rigid, sir. Mathematical precision, but no apparent flexibility. They're maintaining exact distances and angles even during the display maneuvers." "Exactly, and their weapon systems." Park consulted his instruments. "Energy-based, as we suspected, but they're telegraphing every targeting solution. Look at this pattern, they lock on, charge weapons, announce the target, then fire. Very ceremonial." "Like a parade," observed. "This isn't a military demonstration, it's a cultural one. They're trying to impress us, not threaten us." Commander Ra was indeed attempting to impress rather than intimidate. Military doctrine emphasized the superiority of their technology and tactics. Lesser species typically surrendered or requested protectorate status after witnessing such displays. The commander expected humanity's response to follow established patterns: awe, immediate communication attempts, and eventual submission to authority. Instead, the human response was decidedly unconventional. Admiral activated the general communication array and began transmitting on all frequencies the aliens had used. But instead of the expected diplomatic overtures, she broadcast a simple message: "Thank you for the demonstration. We're uploading our response now." What happened next challenged every assumption they held about primitive species. The human response began with the sudden appearance of objects throughout the solar system that hadn't been there moments before. Commander Ra's sensors detected artificial constructs emerging from asteroid belts, rising from planetary surfaces in empty space. Hundreds of them, positioned with perfect three-dimensional coverage of the fleet. "What are those objects?" Ra demanded. His tactical officer studied the readings with growing confusion. "Unknown, Commander. They appear to be simple metal cylinders. No energy signatures, no propulsion systems, no obvious weapons, but they're everywhere." The cylinders weren't impressive individually, crude metal tubes roughly 10 meters long, apparently unpowered and inert. But their positioning was mathematically perfect, creating overlapping fields of coverage that enclosed the entire formation. More disturbing was the realization that they had been positioned in advance, suggesting the humans had detected the fleet's approach long before the believed possible. Admiral's voice came through the communication array again, calm and professional. "We've been tracking your approach for 6 weeks. Impressive stealth capabilities, but you're using hydrogen fusion drives, and hydrogen signatures are detectable at considerable range with the right sensor arrays. We've had time to prepare an appropriate welcome." Commander Ra felt the first stirring of unease. 6 weeks of detection range implied sensor capabilities far beyond human technical specifications. But surely these primitive cylinders couldn't pose any actual threat. "Tactical analysis of the human devices," he ordered. "Simple kinetic projectiles, Commander. Unpowered metal tubes containing what appears to be dense metal cores. No guidance systems, no explosives, no energy weapons. Completely primitive." Admiral continued her explanation as if conducting a friendly lecture. "You're probably wondering about our defensive posture. These are kinetic interceptors, very simple devices, really. Just tungsten rods with minimal guidance systems. The interesting part isn't the projectiles themselves, but their positioning and timing." She paused, allowing her words to be translated and analyzed. "You see, we've calculated your ship's maneuverability parameters based on your demonstration. Very impressive energy-to-thrust ratios, sophisticated gravitational manipulation, excellent acceleration curves. But your formation discipline is so precise that we can predict exactly where each of your vessels will be at any given moment." Commander Ra's unease was growing into alarm. The human admiral was describing tactical analysis of capabilities that should have been impossible for a primitive species to understand, let alone calculate. "Furthermore," Admiral continued, "your weapon systems charge in predictable sequences, very efficient, very powerful, but also very predictable. The charging cycle takes approximately 12 seconds, during which time your vessels maintain stable positions for optimal targeting accuracy." The commander realized with growing horror that the humans had been studying them as intently as they had been studying the humans. Worse, the human analysis appeared to be more accurate and actionable. Now I should mention that our kinetic interceptors aren't particularly impressive by galactic standards. Simple physics, really. But they have one advantage your weapons systems appear to lack: they're already moving. The implication hit Commander Ra like a physical blow. The human projectiles were already positioned and already in motion, following precisely calculated trajectories. While weapons required targeting locks and charging cycles, the human systems had been activated hours or days in advance. "Of course," Admiral continued conversationally, "we don't actually want to fight. We'd prefer to establish diplomatic relations. But since you appear to be conducting weapons demonstrations, we thought it only polite to reciprocate." The tactical displays in the fleet suddenly lit up with targeting indicators. Hundreds of the simple human cylinders were converging on their positions along ballistic trajectories that would impact in less than 3 minutes. The calculations were perfect, each projectile aimed at a specific point, where a vessel would be based on their current formation and movement patterns. "Evasive maneuvers," Commander Ra ordered. But the human admiral's voice interrupted him. "I wouldn't recommend sudden movements, Commander. Our projectiles were calculated based on your current formation patterns. Any deviation from your predicted course will result in collisions with our other kinetic systems." They found themselves trapped in a three-dimensional maze of converging projectiles. Moving in any direction would mean intercepting tungsten rods traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Staying on course meant allowing the carefully calculated impacts to occur as planned. "This is impossible," the tactical officer whispered. "The computational requirements for this type of positioning would require quantum processing arrays. These primitives don't have that technology." Admiral's voice carried a hint of amusement. "Actually, we used a network of standard digital computers, thousands of them linked through our communication systems. Very primitive by your standards, but adequate for calculating ballistic trajectories. We've had practice with this type of problem, something we call orbital mechanics. We've been doing it for about a century now." Commander Ra realized that humanity's apparent technological inferiority had masked a fundamental difference in approach. Where technology was elegant and sophisticated, human systems were crude but practical. Where tactics emphasized power and precision, human strategies relied on preparation and adaptability. "What do you want?" he transmitted, abandoning the formal protocols that had governed first contact scenarios for. "Conversation," Admiral replied simply. "Information exchange. Perhaps some trade opportunities. We're curious about galactic civilization, and we have things that might interest you. But first, we should probably discuss the terms of our interaction." The tungsten rods passed harmlessly through the formation, their trajectories having been calculated to demonstrate capability without causing damage. But the message was unmistakable. Humanity had turned their technological disadvantage into a tactical advantage through superior preparation and unconventional thinking. As the immediate crisis passed, Commander Ra began to understand what Elder had been trying to warn the Council about. These humans weren't simply primitive. They were primitive in specifically dangerous ways. They compensated for technological limitations through intelligence, planning, and creative problem-solving. More concerning was their apparent comfort with calculated risks. No civilized species would have positioned kinetic weapons throughout their own solar system, gambling everything on precise mathematical calculations. The humans had essentially turned their home territory into a massive weapon system, accepting the risk of catastrophic failure in exchange for tactical superiority. Admiral's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Now then, Commander, shall we begin formal first contact protocols? We have some questions about galactic civilization, and we suspect you might have underestimated a few things about humanity. This could be the beginning of a very interesting relationship." As Commander Ra reluctantly began diplomatic communications with the humans, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to become a very different place. The humans hadn't just demonstrated unexpected capabilities. They had revealed a fundamentally different approach to conflict and competition. Elder's warnings echoed in his memory as he realized that humanity's admission to galactic civilization wasn't a question of technological readiness. It was a question of whether the galaxy was ready for humanity. The first exchanges were polite, formal, and educational. But beneath the diplomatic courtesy, both species were rapidly everything they thought they knew about the nature of power, intelligence, and survival in an inhabited galaxy. The humans had passed their first test with flying colors. Unfortunately for everyone else, it had only been the preliminary examination. Ambassador Ra reviewed Commander Ra's first contact report with growing displeasure. The humans had turned what should have been a simple demonstration of superiority into an embarrassing display of vulnerability. Worse, they had done so using technology that barely qualified as advanced by galactic standards. "This is unacceptable," she announced to the assembled War Council aboard the flagship Inevitable Victory. "A single patrol squadron was outmaneuvered by primitives using kinetic projectiles. The implications for our military reputation are severe." Subcommander Lee studied the tactical analysis with professional interest. "The humans demonstrated unusual strategic thinking, Ambassador. They converted their technological limitations into advantages through superior preparation and unconventional deployment patterns." Exactly the problem, Ross snapped. They're unpredictable, which makes them dangerous. Our entire military doctrine is based on technological superiority and tactical precision. If lesser species begin adopting human-style asymmetrical strategies, our standard approaches become ineffective. The Empire had built its power through centuries of consistent military superiority. Their biomechanical warships could adapt to enemy weapons. Their quantum processing systems could calculate optimal tactics in real time. Their temporal manipulation technology allowed them to accelerate combat operations beyond enemy response capabilities. Against conventional opponents, they were unbeatable. Humans, however, appeared to be fundamentally unconventional. Fleet Commander N, a veteran of 17 successful campaigns, raised a concern that had been troubling him since reading the contact reports. Ambassador, the human defensive strategy suggests they've been preparing for galactic contact much longer than our intelligence indicated. The precision of their sensor networks and the sophistication of their tactical calculations imply systematic military development. Impossible, Lees objected. Our surveillance indicates they achieved faster-than-light travel only recently. They lack the technological foundation for advanced military systems. Perhaps, N replied carefully, our assumptions about the relationship between technology and military capability are incorrect. The humans appear to have developed effective strategies using primitive tools. Ambassador Ra found this suggestion personally offensive. The Empire's dominance rested on the principle that advanced technology inevitably produced military superiority. If humans could challenge that principle using crude kinetic weapons and basic computers, it undermined the fundamental logic of power. I propose a demonstration of our capabilities, she announced. A proper military exercise that will establish the correct relationship between our species. Nothing aggressive, simply a clear indication of what resistance to authority would entail. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. A full battle fleet would enter human space and conduct comprehensive training operations near their outer colonies. The exercises would demonstrate technological superiority, tactical sophistication, and overwhelming force projection capabilities. Faced with such a display, humans would surely abandon their unconventional strategies and accept appropriate subordinate status. 3 weeks later, Admiral received intelligence reports about massive fleet movements toward human space. Unlike the previous patrol squadron, this force consisted of 47 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts, 12 battlecruisers, and supporting formations. It represented approximately 10% of the Empire's total military capacity. They're not taking any chances this time, observed Lieutenant Commander Park. Admiral studied the intelligence data with growing concern, but not for the reasons the might expect. Actually, Park, I think they're making a fundamental error in judgment. This fleet is powerful enough to sterilize our colonies, but it's also large enough to represent a significant investment of their military resources. Meaning they're treating this as a demonstration rather than a potential combat operation. Look at the fleet composition. It's designed for maximum visual impact rather than operational effectiveness. They're bringing their most impressive ships rather than their most practical ones. The human response to this escalation surprised everyone involved, including many humans themselves. Instead of diplomatic appeals or defensive preparations, Admiral activated something called Protocol 7, a contingency plan that had been developed in secret by the Deep Space Defense Initiative. The protocol's existence became apparent when human colonies throughout the outer system began implementing coordinated evacuation procedures. But these weren't panicked flights to safety. Instead, civilian populations relocated to specifically prepared positions, while industrial facilities shifted to accelerated production schedules. Ambassador Ra watched these movements with satisfaction. Excellent! The humans are abandoning their outer territories in recognition of our superior power. This demonstration is proceeding exactly as planned. But Fleet Commander N noticed details that troubled him. Ambassador, the human evacuation patterns are unusual. They're not fleeing to their inner system. They appear to be relocating to prepared positions throughout the asteroid belts. Mining operations, obviously. They're attempting to preserve their industrial capacity. Perhaps, but the positioning is too systematic for simple mining. They're establishing overlapping defensive networks throughout three-dimensional space. It resembles the kinetic interceptor strategy from First Contact, but on a much larger scale. Admiral's strategy was indeed ambitious beyond anything they had imagined. Protocol 7 had been developed under the assumption that humanity's first major conflict with galactic civilization would involve technologically superior opponents who relied on conventional military doctrine. The human response was designed to turn the entire outer solar system into a weapons platform. Over the course of 2 weeks, human industrial capacity was redirected toward mass production of kinetic projectiles, sensor networks, and automated guidance systems. Thousands of cargo vessels deployed these systems throughout the asteroid belt, and the cometary halo. The outer solar system became a vast maze of overlapping defensive zones. When the fleet finally arrived, they found themselves facing something unprecedented in galactic military history: an entire star system converted into a weapons platform. "This is impossible," Ambassador Ra declared as sensor readings revealed the scope of human preparations. "No species has ever weaponized an entire solar system. The computational requirements alone would be beyond most civilizations." Fleet Commander N studied the tactical displays with growing professional respect. "Ambassador, I believe we've underestimated human capabilities again. They've created overlapping fields of kinetic projectiles positioned throughout three-dimensional space. Any movement by our fleet will trigger calculated responses from multiple directions." "We have temporal manipulation technology," Lees pointed out. "We can accelerate our combat operations beyond their ability to respond." "Actually," Admiral's voice came through the communication array, "we've been studying your temporal displacement capabilities. Fascinating technology, but it has some interesting limitations." The human admiral's tone carried the same conversational quality as during First Contact, but this time it was accompanied by detailed technical analysis that chilled observers. "Temporal acceleration requires enormous energy expenditure, which creates distinctive signatures detectable at significant range. Your ships also become vulnerable during the acceleration and deceleration phases, when temporal shielding is reduced. Most importantly, your time-dilated operations still occur within normal space-time, which means carefully positioned projectiles can intersect your accelerated movements." Fleet Commander N realized with horror that the humans had not only detected temporal manipulation technology, but had developed countermeasures for it. The kinetic projectile networks weren't just positioned for current space. They had been calculated to intersect temporal displacement corridors as well. "Additionally," Admiral continued, "your biomechanical vessels rely on organic adaptation systems that require time to respond to new threats. Accelerating your ship's temporal frame actually reduces their adaptive capabilities by limiting their processing time for environmental changes." The fleet found themselves in an impossible situation. Their technological advantages had been systematically neutralized by human preparation and unconventional thinking. Worse, the humans had converted their entire solar system into a weapons system specifically designed to counter advanced galactic military technology. Ambassador Ra authorized the first hostile action, ordering her fleet to demonstrate their plasma cannon capabilities by destroying several asteroid-based human installations. The results were catastrophic, but not for humanity. Each plasma cannon discharge created energy signatures that human sensor networks had been designed to detect. Within milliseconds of weapon activation, kinetic projectiles began converging on vessels from dozens of different vectors. The projectiles had been prepositioned based on detailed analysis of weapons systems, calculating exactly where each ship would be during their firing sequences. The biomechanical hulls, designed to adapt to energy weapons and directed particle beams, proved vulnerable to simple kinetic impact. Tungsten rods traveling at significant fractions of light speed penetrated their adaptive armor and caused massive structural damage to several vessels. "Impossible," Ra screamed as her flagship absorbed multiple kinetic impacts. "How can primitives using crude projectiles defeat our adaptive technology?" Admiral's response was educational rather than taunting. "Your adaptive systems are impressive against energy weapons, but they require time to analyze and respond to new threats. Kinetic projectiles don't give your ships time to adapt because the impact occurs faster than your biological systems can process the threat. The engagement continued for 6 hours, with forces repeatedly attempting to use their technological advantages, only to discover that humans had prepared specific countermeasures for each system. Temporal acceleration was countered by prepositioned projectiles, adaptive hulls were overwhelmed by kinetic weapons, and quantum targeting systems were confused by decoy networks distributed throughout the asteroid belt. Most disturbing for was the realization that humans were fighting an entirely defensive battle while still maintaining tactical superiority. They hadn't attempted to attack vessels directly. Instead, they had converted their solar system into a trap that turned advantages into liabilities. By the end of the engagement, 12 vessels had suffered significant damage, including one dreadnought that required emergency evacuation. Human losses consisted entirely of automated systems and unmanned installations. Not a single human life had been lost. Ambassador Ra finally accepted the reality of her situation and requested communication with human leadership. Admiral's response was polite but firm. "Ambassador, we're willing to discuss terms for ending this engagement. But first, I think you should understand what you're really dealing with. This defensive network represents approximately 2% of our total industrial capacity. We implemented it in 18 days using existing infrastructure and basic technology." The implication was terrifying. If humans could create such effective defenses using minimal resources in minimal time, what could they accomplish with full industrial mobilization and extended preparation periods? "What are your terms?" Ra transmitted. "Simple. Withdraw your fleet and inform the Galactic Council that humanity is ready for full Alliance membership. We'll provide complete technical specifications for our defensive systems as a goodwill gesture, along with detailed analysis of galactic military technology based on our observations of your capabilities." The fleet in defeat, carrying with them the knowledge that humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic civilization. A primitive species that could defeat advanced technology through superior strategy, preparation, and unconventional thinking. Ambassador Ra's report to the High Command was brief and devastating. "Humans are not primitive. They are differently advanced. Recommend immediate revision of all tactical doctrines and strategic assumptions regarding technological determinism in military operations." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of Ambassador Ra's humiliating report. Representatives from 47 species gathered in unprecedented urgency as news of the defeat spread through galactic communication networks. Elder floated above the central podium, his ancient form radiating a mixture of vindication and deep concern. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his harmonic tones carrying unusual gravity, "the situation we now face validates my earlier warnings about humanity. However, the implications extend far beyond simple tactical considerations. We are witnessing the emergence of a species that fundamentally challenges our understanding of military power and technological development." The representative extended multiple sensor appendages, analyzing the detailed battle reports. "The human defensive strategy represents a paradigm shift in military thinking. They've demonstrated that technological superiority can be neutralized through strategic preparation and unconventional deployment of primitive weapons." Ambassador of the Confederated Worlds had spent weeks analyzing every detail of the human engagement. More concerning is their apparent understanding of our military doctrines. They didn't simply defeat forces, they specifically countered technological advantages using systems designed for that purpose. Across the galaxy, military strategists were reaching similar conclusions. The humans hadn't won through luck or accident. They had systematically analyzed galactic military technology and developed countermeasures using deliberately primitive tools that circumvented advanced defensive systems. General N of the Void Runners raised the question that troubled every military professional present. How extensively have they been observing us? Their countermeasures were too specific, too targeted to have been developed during the engagement itself. This suggests long-term intelligence gathering and strategic planning. The implications were staggering. If humans had been secretly observing galactic civilization for years or decades, analyzing military capabilities and developing countermeasures, then every species' defensive strategies were potentially compromised. Ambassador Ra activated her communication array from the inevitable victory, still limping back towards space with battle damage that would take months to repair. Honorable representatives, I must report additional intelligence that emerged during our withdrawal. Human space contained defensive installations that our long-range sensors failed to detect during initial reconnaissance. What type of installations? Demanded the hegemony representative. Unknown. Our analysis suggests they were deliberately constructed to avoid detection by our sensor technology. The humans appear to have developed stealth capabilities specifically designed to counter our surveillance methods. Elder's worst fears were being confirmed. This confirms that humanity has been preparing for galactic contact much longer than we realized. They've had time to study our technology, understand our tactical doctrines, and develop specific countermeasures. But the emergency session was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the outer galactic rim. Captain of the merchant vessel Profitable Journey requested immediate council attention regarding developments in human space. Honored Council, I am transmitting from the edge of the Sol system. The humans have contacted me with a formal diplomatic message for the Galactic Alliance. The transmission that followed changed everything. Admiral's image appeared in the council chamber, her calm demeanor offering no hint of the military revolution she had just implemented. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council, I am Admiral Sarah, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Government. We understand that recent events have caused concern about humanity's readiness for galactic citizenship. Her tone was professional, diplomatic, and utterly confident in ways that chilled experienced galactic politicians. We wish to clarify several misconceptions about human capabilities and intentions. First, our defensive actions against the demonstration fleet were purely protective. We harbor no aggressive intentions toward any galactic species. Second, our analysis of galactic military technology was conducted purely for defensive purposes. We've been observing galactic civilization since achieving faster-than-light travel, preparing for eventual contact. Our defensive strategies were developed to ensure successful first contact rather than to threaten established powers. Admiral paused, allowing her words to be translated and absorbed. Third, we formally request full membership in the Galactic Alliance. We believe humanity can contribute significantly to galactic civilization, and we're prepared to share our technological innovations as evidence of our commitment to peaceful cooperation. The final statement caused immediate chaos throughout the chamber. Humanity was offering to share the technology that had defeated the Empire. We're uploading complete technical specifications for our kinetic defense networks, our sensor technologies, and our strategic analysis of galactic military systems. This information is freely available to all Alliance members as a gesture of goodwill and commitment to mutual defense. Elder realized immediately what Admiral was doing. By sharing their military innovations, humans were accomplishing multiple objectives simultaneously, demonstrating their technological capabilities, establishing their value to galactic civilization, and creating mutual dependence that would discourage aggressive action against Earth. But there was a deeper strategy at work. The human technological solutions were specifically designed to counter advanced galactic systems using primitive Earth technology. Any species that adopted human defensive strategies would become dependent on human understanding of galactic military capabilities. Ambassador Ra's voice interrupted from her damaged flagship. The humans are offering military technology that specifically counters our most advanced systems. This isn't diplomacy, it's strategic manipulation. Admiral's response was delivered with devastating politeness. Ambassador, we understand your concern. However, our defensive innovations are reactive rather than aggressive. They're designed to neutralize advanced weapons systems, not to threaten peaceful civilizations. Any species with peaceful intentions would benefit from such technology. The implication was clear. Only aggressive species would consider human defensive technology threatening. General N studied the uploaded technical specifications with growing amazement. These systems are elegant in their simplicity. They convert advanced technology into a liability rather than an advantage. Any military force relying on energy weapons, adaptive hulls, or temporal manipulation becomes vulnerable to these countermeasures. Exactly, confirmed the representative. Human military doctrine appears designed specifically to counter technological superiority using strategic superiority. They've created asymmetrical warfare principles that could revolutionize galactic military thinking. Ambassador raised the crucial question. What are humanity's actual military capabilities? We've seen their defensive systems, but what about their offensive potential? Admiral's response revealed the true scope of human military thinking. Our defensive strategies represent approximately 15% of our total military planning. We've developed comprehensive doctrines for offensive operations, but we prefer not to demonstrate those capabilities unless absolutely necessary. The casual mention of offensive capabilities that would dwarf their already impressive defensive systems sent shock waves through the galactic military establishment. However, Admiral continued, we're willing to share our complete military analysis with Alliance members as part of our membership application. This includes detailed assessment of galactic military capabilities, strategic recommendations for defensive improvements, and theoretical frameworks for asymmetrical conflict resolution. Elder understood that humanity was offering something unprecedented. Complete military cooperation that would benefit all Alliance members while establishing human strategic expertise as indispensable to galactic security. But Admiral wasn't finished. We should also mention that our analysis has identified potential security vulnerabilities in current galactic military doctrine that could be exploited by hostile species. We've developed countermeasures for these vulnerabilities and would be happy to share them with Alliance members. The implication was terrifying. Humans had not only defeated forces, but had identified ways to defeat every other galactic military power as well. Ambassador Ra made one final attempt to maintain dignity. What assurance do we have that humanity won't use these capabilities aggressively? Admiral's answer was both reassuring and ominous. Ambassador, Earth's defensive strategy is based on the principle that our solar system is impregnable to attack by any conceivable force using current galactic technology. We have no need for territorial expansion because no one can threaten our home territory. However, we recognize that other species may not enjoy similar security. We're prepared to assist Alliance members in implementing similar defensive systems, creating mutual security that benefits everyone. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours and reshaped galactic politics forever. Species that had maintained power through military superiority suddenly found themselves dependent on human strategic expertise. Species that had felt vulnerable to stronger neighbors discovered that human defensive technology could provide unprecedented security. The final vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full Alliance membership with immediate effect. But the real transformation was just beginning. Human military advisors were soon embedded with every major galactic military force, sharing strategic knowledge and defensive technologies that revolutionized military thinking throughout the galaxy. Within 6 months, human defensive systems protected Alliance worlds throughout galactic space. Human strategic doctrine was being taught in military academies across dozens of species. Human tactical innovations were being adapted to alien technologies and incorporated into galactic military planning. Ambassador Ra's final report to the High Command captured the new reality. Humans have not joined galactic civilization. They have transformed it. We are no longer the dominant military power in the galaxy. No one is, except possibly humanity itself. Elder's ancient wisdom had proven correct, but even he hadn't anticipated the scope of human strategic thinking. They hadn't simply prepared to defend themselves against galactic civilization. They had prepared to revolutionize it entirely. The galaxy was discovering that evolution on a death world produced more than physical and mental resilience. It produced strategic thinking that could transform disadvantage into advantage, and T5 years after humanity's admission to the Galactic Alliance, Elder prepared his final report as keeper of records. His long life had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the ebb and flow of galactic power, but nothing had prepared him for the transformation wrought by humanity's integration into galactic society. The council chambers themselves reflected the new reality. What had once been a rigid hierarchy dominated by ancient species was now a dynamic forum where human strategic advisors sat alongside traditional representatives. Admiral, now holding the newly created position of Alliance Strategic Coordinator, reviewed defensive preparations that span the entire galaxy. "Status report from the Outer Rim territories," she announced to the assembled representatives. The casual authority in her voice would have been unthinkable 5 years earlier, but now it seemed natural. Humanity had earned their leadership position through demonstrated competence rather than technological superiority or ancient precedent. The transformation had not occurred through conquest or intimidation. Instead, humans had systematically proven that their strategic thinking produced better outcomes for everyone involved. Alliance member species that had adopted human defensive doctrines reported unprecedented security levels. Trade routes protected by human-designed systems experienced dramatic reductions in piracy. Colonial territories defended using human strategies proved virtually immune to hostile action. Ambassador of the Confederated Worlds delivered her report with satisfaction that would have seemed impossible during humanity's initial evaluation. "The human defensive grid protecting our core systems has deterred 3 separate incursion attempts by rogue elements. Their strategic analysis of hostile force composition allowed us to implement countermeasures before conflicts could develop." The genius of human strategic thinking had revealed itself over time. Where traditional galactic military doctrine focused on overpowering enemy forces, human approaches emphasized making conflict unprofitable or impossible. They created defensive systems that turned hostile action into strategic disadvantage, regardless of technological superiority. General N, whose mercenary forces had been revolutionized through human tactical training, provided analysis that captured the broader implications. Human strategic doctrine has fundamentally altered the nature of military power in this galaxy. Technological superiority no longer guarantees military success. Strategic preparation and adaptive thinking have become more important than advanced weapon systems. But the most remarkable transformation had occurred within the Empire itself. Ambassador Ra, her pride long since replaced by professional respect, delivered a report that would have seemed like fantasy during humanity's initial evaluation. "The integration of human strategic advisors into military planning has improved our defensive capabilities by approximately 400%. More significantly, their analysis of our technological advantages has revealed applications we never considered." They had discovered that human strategic thinking could enhance rather than replace technological superiority. Human advisors had shown them how to use their biomechanical technology more effectively, how to optimize their temporal manipulation systems, and how to integrate their quantum processing capabilities with strategic planning that actually utilized their full potential. Fleet Commander N, now serving as liaison between forces and human strategic command, provided details that illustrated the scope of this transformation. Human analysis revealed that our previous military doctrine utilized approximately 30% of our technological capabilities. Their strategic frameworks have allowed us to integrate our advanced systems in ways that multiply their effectiveness. Elder listened to these reports with a mixture of vindication and profound unease. His warnings about humanity had proven accurate, but the reality exceeded even his most pessimistic projections. Humans hadn't simply challenged galactic civilization. They had fundamentally restructured it around principles that favored their particular type of intelligence. "If I may," he interjected during a pause in the reports, "I believe we should examine the broader implications of these developments. Humanity has achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They have established strategic hegemony without territorial conquest, technological dominance, or cultural assimilation." Admiral nodded respectfully to the ancient keeper of records. Elder raises an important point. Our integration into galactic civilization has been successful precisely because we've focused on creating mutual benefits rather than extracting advantages. Every species that has adopted human strategic principles has improved their security and prosperity. But concern went deeper than simple military or political transformation. "Admiral, your species has accomplished something that challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of power and civilization. You've proven that strategic intelligence can overcome any technological advantage, that preparation can neutralize any superior force, that adaptive thinking can transform any disadvantage into an asset." The implications were staggering. If human strategic principles were truly universal, then the entire galactic hierarchy based on technological advancement and ancient precedent was obsolete. Power would flow to species that could think strategically rather than those who possessed advanced technology or accumulated resources. The representative, whose people prided themselves on analytical thinking, provided confirmation of spheres. Our mathematical analysis confirms Elder's assessment. Human strategic doctrines, when properly implemented, provide decisive advantages over conventional military approaches regardless of technological disparities. This represents a fundamental shift in the basis of galactic power. Admiral's response revealed the full scope of human strategic thinking. We understand the concerns about strategic hegemony. That's why we've been sharing our methodologies rather than simply providing solutions. We want every species to develop their own strategic capabilities rather than becoming dependent on human analysis. But even this apparent generosity served human strategic objectives. By teaching other species to think strategically, humans ensured that galactic civilization would operate according to principles that favored human-style intelligence. They were transforming their potential competitors into strategic partners whose success depended on human methods. Ambassador Ra, despite her genuine respect for human capabilities, voiced the question that troubled many representatives. Admiral, what assurance do we have that humanity's strategic dominance will remain benevolent? Your species has demonstrated the ability to neutralize any military force, to counter any technological advantage, to transform any situation to your benefit. What prevents you from using these capabilities for conquest? Admiral's answer revealed perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of human strategic thinking. Ambassador, conquest would be strategically counterproductive. Our security and prosperity depend on a stable, cooperative galactic civilization. Any attempt at territorial expansion or political domination would destabilize the systems that benefit us. Furthermore, she continued, our analysis indicates that human strategic advantages are sustainable only within cooperative frameworks. Hostile action would unite other species against us, forcing us to expend resources on military operations rather than beneficial development. Elder realized that humans had solved the classical problem of strategic dominance: how to maintain superiority without triggering coalition formation by subordinate powers. By making their dominance beneficial rather than threatening, they had created a stable hegemonic system that other species actively supported. The final reports of the session confirmed the comprehensive nature of human transformation of galactic civilization. Trade systems optimized through human analysis had increased galactic commerce by 60%. Diplomatic protocols incorporating human strategic thinking had resolved conflicts that had persisted for centuries. Scientific research, guided by human methodologies, had produced breakthrough innovations across multiple disciplines. As the session concluded, Elder requested permission to address the assembled representatives one final time. His ancient voice carried the weight of historical perspective as he delivered his assessment of humanity's impact on galactic civilization. Esteemed colleagues, 5 years ago I warned this council about the potential dangers of human integration into our society. Those warnings proved accurate, but incomplete. I failed to anticipate that humans would transform our civilization in ways that benefited everyone involved. He paused, gathering his thoughts for a statement that would define his legacy as keeper of records. Humanity represents something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that achieves dominance through competence rather than conquest, that maintains power through cooperation rather than coercion, that advances their interests by advancing everyone's interests. Their admission to the Alliance did not simply add another member species. It fundamentally altered the nature of galactic civilization itself. We now live in a galaxy where strategic thinking matters more than technological advancement, where adaptive intelligence trumps accumulated resources, where preparation and planning can overcome any material advantage. Admiral accepted this assessment with characteristic grace. Elder, your warnings helped us understand the magnitude of our responsibility. We've tried to prove worthy of the trust that this alliance has placed in us. But Elder wasn't finished. Admiral, I believe you've succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. However, I must note that your species' integration has rendered traditional forms of galactic politics obsolete. We now exist in a civilization shaped by human strategic principles, defended by human military innovations, and guided by human analytical frameworks. This is not necessarily problematic, but it represents a fundamental transformation that future historians will mark as the beginning of a new era in galactic development. As the representatives dispersed, returning to that were now defended by human-designed systems and governed by human-influenced policies, Elder remained in the chamber to complete his final report. The council cautioned them about humans, he dictated to the recording systems. Their laughter cost them everything they believed about power, technology, and civilization itself, but perhaps what they lost was worth sacrificing for what they gained. A galaxy where intelligence and cooperation triumph over force and domination. Humanity's final test was not their ability to defeat galactic military forces or neutralize advanced technology. Their final test was whether they could transform galactic civilization without destroying it. They passed with flying colors. The galaxy had learned that evolution on a death world produced more than physical resilience, mental adaptability, or strategic intelligence. It produced wisdom, the understanding that true power comes not from the ability to destroy one's enemies, but from the capacity to transform them into friends. Elder's final entry in the galactic records was simple. Humanity achieved the impossible. They conquered the galaxy through the radical strategy of making everyone better off. The Galactic Alliance had gotten exactly what Elder had warned them about. A species that would transform everything they thought they knew about civilization, power, and survival. They had just been fortunate enough to discover that the transformation was worth the cost. Earn potential enemies into dependent allies. Humanity had passed their second test with flying colors. The final examination was yet to come. The galaxy was about to learn that evolution on a death world created more than just physical resilience. It created minds capable of turning any disadvantage into a weapon. The stage was set for first contact between humanity and the Empire. Neither species fully understood what they were about to encounter, but only one of them had spent learning how to turn disadvantages into advantages.